Good evening, dear brothers and sisters. On behalf of the ICBN family, I would like to welcome you all. I'm so thankful to Brother William Paul for introducing and inviting me to this group. Since the time I have joined this group, it has been a blessing for me. It has been a journey of learning, love, and guidance. The interactions, the information, and the impact that this group is having is immense. I trust that this group will be a blessing to each one of us. It is great to meet all the participants who have joined us to enrich their learning and networking capabilities through today's ICBN webinar on marketing in the marketplace. We look forward to a great session, and I would like to thank the organizing team of ICBN and our resource person, Mr. Abraham. We'd like to welcome you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Gurpreet. And I quickly like to hand over this time to Mr. Abraham. But before that, I'd just like to introduce him. And last time, I think some of us were there on this call, and we had an introduction from Mr. John Jacob, who personally know Mr. Abraham. And over the period of time, we begin to know each other through WhatsApp messaging and other things. Mr. Abraham is a well-known person globally, and he's a director of strategic alliances with the Lead India Foundation US and a global influencer and a strategist thing. He's a core member and a senior advisor with India Importers Chamber of Commerce and Industry, New Delhi, India, and a former director with SME Chambers of Commerce, Chamber of India, Mumbai, and advisor to Garuda Aerospace, Chennai, and strategic advisor and a member of advisory board, Group MRP, Mumbai. Actually, if you introduce him, the list goes on. And I've just condensed this list, and I've just given a very brief about him. And he's been on several forums and also a man of influence with several hours that he's spent advising and mentoring people and also mentoring organizations and businesses. So without wasting much time, I would just like to hand over this time to Mr. Abraham, and we would look forward for the talk on marketing in the marketplace. And after his talk, we will take some of the questions that we have. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for your good introduction. And also, I would like to thank the ICBN for giving me this opportunity to in fact, I would say to talk and know each other more than myself giving a lecture. I would like to have an interactive session after this, wherein people can ask their own questions, and whatever best possible I would answer. Here in this particular talk, I would like to zero in on especially a very important case study, which is considered by some as a very big one, but I consider this as the best. In fact, I'm going to talk about Amul. So I would be talking about Amul. Amul, as you all know, is it's an iconic brand. As far as I consider it as good as an apple for India. The reason being, it has actually hit the base where people really need money, and they have really evolved over time as real people who can really command a much better living and a much better understanding amongst a lot of people, because they were like a downtrodden tribe earlier, and this was inculcated by one single person by the name Varghese Kurian, who really exploded with this brand, I would say, because he really gave a fight for a lot of big brands amongst the world, in the world calendar, and I would say that they really exploded in the market very much. So what happened in this, the main reason to take this particular thing of Amul is that, in the pandemic, there was a lot of, hue and cry in various companies, the people who were all stranded, the people losing jobs, retention, this, that, and all that. This was one singular company which was really standing out amongst the, the ashes. And you won't believe that because of the seeds sown earlier, there was a lot of talk about Amul even before this COVID has really erupted. People knew this brand because the farmers were, really catered to earlier, and they really made it a brand to look for amongst the ashes. The reason is they quickly analyzed the whole situation, and just like what I said, the seeds were sown by Mr. Varghese Kurian. I would like to emphasize a bit about that. The person who really transformed the way people think about the dairy industry. The dairy industry was an unorganized industry earlier. There were certain people who were looting the market, like a person like Pistanji, who was taking care of the spalts and butter and all that, where they had a different tactic, which where the middlemen were getting real big booty and the farmers were ignored. But quickly, this was really identified by one particular person who's the unsung hero over here. One person by the name Tribhuvan Das. He was the person who really identified this thing, and he really identified the person also who was a foreign returnee from having, had a good education and all abroad. He came here, and he was actually a person who came to Anand by default. And somehow he fell in love with the place, and rest, what you see, is history. All the Operation Flood, the World Food Prize, everything came in line. Actually, the person who really evolved the brand and the thing was not known much because he never had the front-end capability to really, blast the brand across India. Here, there was a lot of, dialogues between this person who's Tribhuvan Das, who's the actual unsung hero, who identified the gem, who really made this a brand of history. And if you see, whenever we mention Amul, his name comes as a second. Mr. Varghese Kurian's name comes as a second name, and it is, his, stubbornness to really, inculcate a brand which was dwindling, which has made India proud on the world scene. We have to understand one very important factor, that he is single-handedly, to a very great extent, in the modern world, who has really evolved this particular dairy industry to what is it today. There are many players who came and fought and all that, they perished. But here, in this, even in this COVID time, there are people who took up the ropes and did it. And thanks to people like Rupinder Singh Sodhi, who was the MD, who took up the rope and took it to a different level altogether. I would say it was a typical orbit shift to a different level, where people really recognized it as a brand to be reckoned with. Here, what happened is, when these things, when other people were perishing in the surroundings, they all tried to, gather these guys and try to pay them off and enhance the thing to the maximum. And here, the optimum thing, what they did is, they wanted this milk, the people who are the farmers who are selling milk, to be most, sought after, well paid for, and well utilized. These were the three things what they did, and they did it to nicety, and to a certain extent, a big thanks to Rupinder Singh Sodhi for taking it to a level where they have been noticed in such a manner that they were really a standout performer. And they made crores of profitability in this particular. I believe this the correct figure was 698 crores, which was quite good. And when all the other companies were really perishing, they really stood out in the thing. And you won't believe, when people cut down on certain product thing, they escalated the products. I believe they made 33 products at that time, and they put it to such a level that people used to, echo the. I would echo the Onida's punchline: "Neighbors envy, owners pride." It was like that, and it really, thumbed the market in such a way that no one was able to compete with them. For which I'll tell you certain things which they did. They collected all the people who were suffering by not selling appropriate, liters of milk and all from the various farmers they had in the background. They all collected that, and I believe they had an additional quota of 35 lakh liters, it seems, that they collected, and thereby they were all paid off. And they also went to a very great extent to cater to a lot of big producers and make them as resourceful as possible, and as the rates, everything were mitigated, at the same time not brought to a scavenger level, and they took the thing to a different level altogether, and that made the whole populace more and more, I would say that they really liked the whole theory, and people started trying to unite with them to make things much better. But when the whole thing came to a stop, there was a paradigm shift in their attitude also, in terms of their the consumer behavior also changed, and they switched over from even loose milk, which was quite rampant, to packaged milk, which also gave them a big boost for augmenting their sales. Certain things which were down and out, like the frozen food sector, they utilized it, and I would say like a contract manufacturing. They utilized those machines for various other things. Even the trucks were utilized, and various things were utilized. And when even the trucks were stopped, they utilized the mainstay, the train. And the trains also did a big job of circulating it up and down across the country. And this has really created not just an example, but also how you thrive in a crisis situation. And this is a very golden example, I would say, for anyone to follow, but very few have followed because they never had the wherewithal for it. Then there was a different change altogether, which was a very classic change when they combined with IBM. And they spent a bit of money, and that is one reason they have really prospered in such a way that there are very few people who could match them on when the whole thing is digitized, and when the whole thing is put into apple pie order. There are very few people who could encounter them too. And IBM, thanks to IBM and Amul's unification, which they spend a hearty amount of almost 80 crore, but that really proved to be a big boon for them in the long run. This came as a boon when the pandemic struck the whole nation, and they didn't have much of a option other than to streamline. It mainly helped in streamlining the whole operation, and also they made things much more I would say organized in a disorganized sector which was there earlier. And there was very few people who could argue, and it was in the typical process which was carried out at that time. And if you see, things really progressed at that time, and the sales escalated in various sectors. There was a surprise increase in things like products like condensed milk. Then they had a big soar in the cottage cheese industry, and even things like the standard cheese what you have. All these showed remarkable percentage of increase, and which really showed very much in the market in such a way that people took notice of each and every progressive step they made. And thanks to the cooperation of the farmers, which again, the full marks go to Mr. Tribhuvan Das and the late Varghese Kurian, who really organized it in such a manner that the grassroots benefited. Why I take this as the very pivotal case study is that it really changed the face of the farmers' lifestyle, and the number of people who are benefited out of it is not. It's something very phenomenal. 36 lakhs or something. They have really, and he made it an organized thing, which very few thought would get into that stream. And bringing about that institute also really made it even more powerful. And his a bit of his stubbornness really made this name what it is today, because of that. Even if you see the mascot which they use, that Amul girl, that also has really persisted over time, and that has really etched in the memory of many people and etched in the minds in such a way that when you say Amul, there is always a hearty laugh on most of the faces. And even with their products, they have really made it such a way that the imprint has been made a lasting one, even with the multinationals making foray into India. And thanks to his mindset also in sustaining that company for years together and making it the company which people vie for. And if you see the farmers, everyone was made like a minute shareholder because of their involvement in their day-to-day activities. Everything was triggered. There was a lot of people who wanted to really really be part and parcel of this particular company. And where they started and where they have evolved came to be a big, a blown up story where people started appreciating them from the roots. And even when they were giving very laudatory statements about the company, each and every person was speaking something very high, which I've never seen in most of the employees or the people who are concerned with those type of companies. But this company is a standout again for the people appreciating what, especially the grassroots, appreciating the company to a very great extent, to a very great phase also, so that they really had something to really be proud of. It has always been India's icon. Amul will stay, and Amul is going to be a very big name altogether because their system is such that very few can break it. Even their competitors like a Paulson, they suffered because of the middlemen holding roost and making money. The lower, the farmers never made money there. So that was another ploy they used to make it to the state what they are today. If you see Amul, when you mention it, many people even hesitate to say what is the full form of it. But it is Anand Milk Union Limited. But that acronym which has come out to be a very good and very trustful name, which really lies imprinted. And very few can really take away any credit from the way that company has evolved and what it is today. If you see a person like, again, I'm coming back to Varghese Kurian, he had evolved it, he studied it, though a reluctant person to be offered a space in Anand, it was a forceful, appointment. And he just he fell in love with the place in course of time. Though he had a lot of inhibitions at the initial stage, he really evolved it, and we have to give 150% credit to that person who has really seen to it that that brand really makes it, and it makes an indelible mark on the Indian soil. And wherever there were anything connected to dairy and or dairy products or anything, and his compulsions into that were very phenomenal, and that we have to really give him full marks for it. In fact, I had a small interaction with him years back, and I found him to be very, very welcoming at first place, though he had some stubborn behavior. But his ideas and all were really welcomed by even the smallest of person who had not much of in the literary bracket, but far lower in thing. Anywhere you go, he was hailed. He was instrumental for a lot of things, where even the people of the top brass from the Indian context, from the central government, were involved in making this a success story. They made a lot of attempts to squash it, but that never happened, because he was very, very stringent on certain norms, and he held on to it like a leech. And that, again, credit goes to him. A lot of people from Delhi and all those mega metros tried to squash this brand, but it never happened, because the power of substance which he inculcated in the lower strata of society is something which is very phenomenal, which very few have done. And I consider it an apple for India just because it has reached the type of population which is a majority in India, which people have not thought of. We are talking of big innovations like, if you see from the Apple front and all that, the type of brand and the type of brand involvement is totally different when compared to this. This is a simple product, but with glowing maturity and with glowing attributes, functionally effective for a person in the lower strata. That is the I would say the highlighting point of how this brand has evolved over time. Again, when we come to Amul, again, this particular brand has made certain strides on certain areas where people have not thought of. Where there has been failure, they met with success. That is another side I would like to say, because they evolved people from one corner to another and saw to it that everyone was happy, everyone was getting their due, and no one was going hungry. He also evolved in one of the interviews, which Mr. Kurian was saying that once when he was inspecting the one of the manufacturing places, one person was dipping his head and drinking milk. Immediately, he didn't say anything. He asked him that, what have you done? He lied. He lied to him. He didn't say anything. He just went back. He made a policy that everyone would get half a liter of milk from that day onwards. And he did that. And there was a big change in the approach. There was a big change in the production, the big change in the people's attitude, a big change in, to work relentlessly, a big change to not hamper their hardworking nature and bring in maximum production as possible. So these factors made Amul again a very indelible, and people loved it. Another thing what I've seen, I've personally interacted with some people, and I found that the people really love him, and he really, created demigod status amongst in Gujarat, which no one can, it was something which is something, indomitable image he made in such a way that people can't even touch him. But later on, due to certain things, he had to back out. and then eventually he died. The other day, when I was just walking through one of those parlors, I saw his board. That reminded me of the legacy what he has created. There was his photograph, and below it is written, it was the centenary year of his. And that again evolved a lot of cherished memories for a lot of people who saw how this person with the demigod status had evolved the brand. And many did a lot of backtracking, because I happened to meet a few people who are from the milk dairy business. They were all they were all in awe of this particular person, and really it changed the face of ourselves looking at milk itself, though it is a very simple product. Because of a lot of need for it anywhere, it has been looked on upon as a very good product also. And being an essential commodity in the COVID time, that really, the sales also really skyrocketed, and there was no barrier for them to really curb it. There was a lot of restrictions which were put by certain people, but they maneuvered it in such a way that this brand again became very, very phenomenal. And that 33 products evolving in such an era was a stamp of authority and stamp of class and the stamp of consumption also in that particular span of time. And it shattered all records, and it shattered the mindset of a lot of people thinking about Amul as a brand, in the long run. And when you look at from the hindsight also, there were very few who could compete, because their system was in such apple pie order that they couldn't do anything to it, even if they wanted to. So once these brands were established, there was a lot of feedback from the market that we want more and we want more. And you won't believe, they went to an extent of almost 130 to 140% of their consumption for supplying the things. And the profits were phenomenal. And everyone every small employee, right from the roots to the top, where there was absolute praise for all these people, right from the government to all the and being in Gujarat, it added impetus to the already established brand also. And there was always a liking for that particular brand because of that evolvement in such an era. And it is a very seldom found exercise where a brand which was existing, by a bit of a change around and bit of risk taking, they made it big in such a way that everyone started envying it. Many other brands tried these tricks, tried the other various ploys to come into the fray and to compete with them, but most of them fell flat. The reason being, they were not able to sustain. They were not able to get hold of the roots. Here, the biggest winning point were the farmers. When you get this is a big classic example for people who want to evolve, have to evolve from the roots. If you don't have a base, that will hit you at the top. That is what has happened to various companies, because they ignored their basic structure, which here the basic, I would say the foundation, which are the farmers. And they all were feeding the people at the top, which never happened. The feeding happened from the bottom, and it went to the top. And any big company, if it has really reached the top, is because of certain fundamentals which were ironed out at the initial stage to spiral to a very great heights where they can really call the shots anytime. And thanks to the whole thing goes to the farmers who have got a big base, and these people really inculcated a lot of values because the person at the top always cared for them. And that was inculcated by everyone who followed, even Mr. Kurian. And this, and by certain modernized strategies like the IBM thing and all that, made that brand iconic one. Now, if you go to any place outside India also, Amul is well known. Even in, if you go to these big stores also, Amul is, it's actually flooded. Their products are flooded because their range has become stupendous, and they have grown to a level where people can't bottle them. And if you see, this thing has come because of the nature and the consideration point. Here, there are a lot of things which are, the empathetic point has been given a lot of emphasis. And, you know, the considerate point also has been given a lot of emphasis. Everyone were fed with decent wages, and some were given for overtime and all that in this pandemic era. And they have been brought to a level where they never wanted to revolt against the company. That is another big point. Certain places that is happening because of the retrenchment, the layoffs, and various things which are happening like that. So here, because of the over-involvement of the top professionals, and they've been asked and instructed to, you know, look into what are the problems and what are the things which they face, which is coming as an impediment for their production, you know, exercise and all that. So there was a lot of fellow feeling, a bit like the Tatas, you know, that where things are, you know, there's a empathetic approach which has made that particular group really a standout. So here also it is first is the roots, which very few have done, and the second thing is the this empathetic nature, then the considerate nature, and giving things which they really deserve. Here we have to see one thing, that people never come free to work. They were paid adequately. They were paid with the some conscience. They were paid with a lot of for the relentless efforts they have done in this particular era, and so on. So here, if you see a person who really wants to do something from the lower strata of society, especially in a place, a developing country like India, it has to be given full credit. I now, with my whatever cognitive nature I have, I can understand why he was given the World Food Prize. The World Food Prize was not given just because he produced, but he produced with the right set of people who were really benefited in the long run. And still, if you, I will not be surprised if a monument is erected in his name, because he has fed a lot of families, and that has been the involvement here. Here in this particular case study, it is a classic and the best case, I would say, of empathy and being considerate to a big set of people who are the deserved community, which was very conveniently ignored by both the government and both a lot of societies, and that magnanimity of thought of his to bring them all together to make it a unified and very potent force in India. Till date, many people have tried to emulate this particular brand in terms of their functioning, but they have miserably failed, because somewhere or the other, they had some impediment that they were not able to come down on it. He, in spite of not knowing the language, Mr. Varghese Kurian, again, in spite of not knowing the language, which he very clearly told, just a smattering of it he knew, he could, with the help of certain people, get to know what their real problems are. And he addressed those problems. And the rest, what we see is a big, a big success story, which I don't think in this near future it is going to get emulated, or in terms of the size of business, in the size of people he has touched upon. It's not going to come, that's for sure, because the type of seeds he has sown are so deep that they will not throw it away and go. And in a place like India, this is of paramount importance. Another, that is something which is regarding Amul, and Amul will stay, it remains to stay, and it is going to be one of those stories even after a millennium, I would say, because that thing is something which is very, I consider it one of the biggest success stories ever. Because in India, in such a place where we have 29 states, 29 pots, government opposition, state government opposition, central government opposition, and bringing in such a thing with 36 lakhs is no joke. And we have to give full credit to the whole team for sustaining it after a lot of things have gone by. So in fact, that is regarding Amul. A similar thing has happened in Ligit Papad, if you see, in Mumbai. There are 7, I would say, illiterate, ordinary women started it. And that particular company has evolved to a 1,600 crore company today. The reason being, they always believed in doing it like a cottage industry. And they have done it, and they have proved it, and they have proved it wrong to the so-called big giants in the industry, the transnationals, the multinationals, and so on. And if you see, if that brand has come out in the open, and in a place like a megapolis like Mumbai, it is something which has, again, the seeds have been sown by these people. And these 7 women who really evolved this brand to such a big extent that, people have no other thing other than to admire it. Quality control was maintained. Everything was maintained. Even their harmony was maintained. Everyone was made a small shareholder. All these small things, what you think of, were done to them, and they were, happy lot. Their, their sales force augmented to a very big extent from a minuscule setup to a mega setup, but in scattered format, where there was the delivery was proper, everything was proper. People started respecting that brand. People started, accepting that brand like any other brand. Every person evolved there, again, like a Amul story, but not to that extent. But this was amongst women. That was again amongst the farmers who were collectively women, children, and the whole family. Here it was confined to women. So every brand here, if you see, has got some area where they really evolved and they remained there because of certain level-headed people at the top. That is also there. They had, here the biggest story here is the question of sharing. And the sharing didn't come overnight. It came with a lot of thought, and thought by not PhD holders or doctorates. They were very ordinary, illiterate women who were just functionally used for making out this particular product, the Ligit Papad. So Ligit Papad, again, is a big story which has made big strides over the years. And today we see the, not culmination, the involvement in that particular brand has evolved to such an extent that it is way above 1,600 crores, I believe. So if you see, these people all have from ordinary backgrounds. People with knowledge, shared the knowledge. In Varghese Kurian's case, it was sharing of knowledge to a very great extent, sharing his wisdom to a person who never knew to combine the union, the farmers and union. That was Mr. Prabhu Das. But he saw that this person had the wherewithal to make this a brand, the brand it is today. And here he was like a kingmaker, and Mr. Varghese Kurian was the king, if you see. And the kingmaker is not talked about much because he has not come into the limelight much, just like what he had. And he never had that, poise and, front-end capability to really, brush through brands and make it established, which was again Varghese Kurian's thing. The similar thing, in Legit Puppet, it was through certain sources that they made it very famous. I still remember buying this particular one pack, and that the taste is something very phenomenal and it's very natural. So there was no adulteration, and things were put in such a way that people started loving that taste also. It has got a bit of a spicy taste, which everyone loved, and it remained to stay. And a puppet was a thing which everyone wanted. And a lot of people wanted that particular. It became like a staple for certain Maharashtrian households, and even a lot of people in the Bombay household, where the head count was high and they could sell very much, thanks to the people who really, really liked the taste, and it was something which was a relish to their palate, and so it really evolved as a real brand, and from the cottage industry, but it became a mega brand in subsequent course. So that is another big involvement about this Legit Powered. And then we have a lot of other brands which have come and gone, and some have sustained, and there are brands like this the current era. There's like MI and all that was survived, but there have been certain compulsions in that brand to bring out the best, because they feared competition, they feared also the readiness of the product, and they feared the readiness of the customer at first place. So, but by God's grace, certain brands have evolved, and they have come to stay. They have come to stay in such a way that they have made an indelible mark on the Indian horizon, and they have really made it to the extent they wanted public acceptance. So there are a lot of stories like that, and then we have things like even in the chip industry also, the M1 making big strides in the Apple device, and thereby making it very indelible and making it more indispensable in the top end market, and creating a real dent on certain functionalities of certain devices. And so there are a lot of things what we can do, and the brand is going to evolve if the public also nod their head. At the end of the day, any brand becomes a big brand only by public acceptance, the first point. Then we have the improvisations and all that, which comes with feedbacks, and it culminates in a very dashy or a very useful or a very worthwhile product in the bargain. So it is going to have a lot of emphasis on how people react to situations. Now, because of the disruption, there is, there's a lot of things happening. I still remember, I reminded of one instance when in my earlier childhood, not childhood, in the sales career, I had we were given with, we were equipped with pages, which were really phased off within no time. The reason being evolvement and disruption. So disruption again is a big, I would say, big headache, because a disruptive mind is a disruptive technology later on. So that also is creating havoc. And what we have to have our eyes and ears open when we have certain brands coming out and trying to corner the market. And we have to have our the knowledge faculty and our our disruptive faculty to be at its helm to really encounter such things, because we live in an age of discontinuity, and things can happen very fast. And so we always have to have a vision wherein we are always mindful of the fact that anything can happen anytime. A person with 20 years experience can be relegated to the background overnight because of this disruptive technology happening and a lot of things coming up. And so luckily on certain grounds, there is not much of things happening, but in the electronic media and all the other segments, there's a big disruption happening. And disruption is another thing which will stall sales also of certain things which they thought would sell. Then the mindset change has been a big evolvement over time. The COVID has brought out the juice out of us, and we are thriving to exist or perish. And it has become more of an existence scenario than flamboyantly making rapid strides in progress. But existence has become a thing. Today's loss can be tomorrow's gain. You don't know. The things are, someone's loss also is another one's gain. So the balance is always like this. So we have to face it with full ammunition and see how we can best thrive in the market, which is really trying to hammer us down because of various constraints which have been forced upon us because of the situation right now, and with the impending gruesome war which is happening, which is creating a lot of havoc amongst a lot of fellow comrades who are there, who are studying and all that. It's really creating a lot of disruptive things in various sectors, and this could happen for various things. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Just to quote, just because of COVID, things getting stranded. If you see in the automotive industry, there has been a latent, demand for chips, and this has been hampered because of Taiwan. Things are stalled, and China is making inroads to capture it also. That is one thing what I heard, and because of that, there is a big queue for the delivery of vehicles. The reason is, unless and until they have these high-end chips, they can't have these high-end vehicles also out. And these dealers are using different ploys. I'm talking of certain exigencies which come with these troubled times. And this is a sterling example of that. And vice versa, there are various things happening. This is one instance which has been really magnified and shown. And people, most of them, some of them don't know why it is getting delayed. The reason is this. Then certain other, untoward happenings like floods and all that, that also will create a lot of havoc in the climate change. A lot of things are there. on top of it, it is just like salt means, adding salt into the wound. All these things are happening. So it creates a lot of delay, things getting stranded, things getting out of the market, lack of demand, lot of, things which are indirect also come in and become direct, which people, common men like us, are not able to fathom and perceive. And because of that, we are being hampered on certain decision making. Here, what I'm coming to is decision making. If in the automotive industry, if cars don't roll out, the money doesn't come in. If the money doesn't go out, what they will do? So that there is a lot of hampering everywhere. And when we really come and thrust ourselves forward, we have to have everything in mind. And we have to see right and left, whether people are really suffering. This is the time to lend a helping hand also, because of the COVID things still not settled down, because it is going like an ECG graph. Today it is COVID-19, tomorrow it is Delta, and then it is Omicron. Then it is every day some name is evolving, and this has become a cheap way and a very economical way for even terrorists to operate, honestly speaking. So this is, it is hampering a lot of things in our road towards progress. Why I took up this point is, I know certainly the other day I was just in one of those showrooms where they were selling electric vehicles. A lot of things are stranded because all the things which are labor intensive, all are stopped. So that marketing, why I put this way, point which is a bit out of the way into it, is because the whole process of marketing a product and thereby sales is getting stranded, and thereby the profitability is coming down. A lot of indirect things are happening. Many people are getting chopped off from the so-called powerful companies, and even people are making beeline outside the country to exit the country. Ford is a big example, which really happened. And then we have the other companies to follow. Unless and until we have certain measures and the marketing and the sales and this thing improves, the units, the number of units and all will not come. And thereby the profitability, everything goes, and it paves the way for various other, methods to enhance or to augment the sales. So here we have to see minutely how we can strategize or re-strategize, depending. In certain places, you might have to take a back seat and then come back and see how you can sell things. And the list is endless, because every day something is cropping up, and we have to find some ways and means to encounter it and see to it that now the virtual space is increasing. The virtual space, the very Zoom, is getting into dizzying heights. So there are, when one is perishing, another person prospers. So that is the name of the game, and every person has his day. So that is the way the whole world is operating. We live in a world now sans boundaries, and being a wired world, a lot of operations have been switched over to a typical virtual situation where we have to imbibe certain things, we have to sacrifice certain things, and cater to certain things which were not prevalent earlier, and investment opportunities, certain things have to be curbed, certain decision making has to be stranded, certain certain issues have to be taken care of later on. The employees issues, a lot of things are to be, the clients have to be catered to at a much more deeper way. Much closer access has to be kept. Then things like even we have to be more empathetic. more understanding, and things with a bit of which need very sharp decision making have to be allayed for the time being. Big companies, capital investment, these are all standard things. I'm just reiterating that because these are also important at this juncture. And even people who are, anything which is very capital intensive has to be really curbed at this juncture. And, we have to make a slow move to surge it forward. So there are a lot of things like that. And we have to also have a stable mind at this time, because a lot of people are disturbed. A lot of interventions are there, right from, spiritual intervention and, various other interventions. People getting irritated, people taking the extreme step. A lot of things are happening. So that is something to be allayed, other than the opportunities what are there. So we have to, see our left and right and forward and all that, and backward also, to see whomsoever are suffering. We have to take them off and bring them to a different light, and see to it that they also live their life properly, which is something to be very much taken care of at this stage, because certain things can be kept at bay, but certain things like, we have to sustain ourselves to live tomorrow. So that is another side which we have to give great impetus on, to see to it that people have to find new avenues of sustaining themselves also. That is by, digging deep into themselves and see what avenues they can really prosper and really come out with in the best way, so that they also don't go, jobless. So there is going to be a lot of confusion. It's not going to be the same tomorrow. The yesterday has gone, the tomorrow is different. So we have to have certain things which will sustain us for some time, and God forbid nothing should happen to people in the war, the impending war, I would say. And for that matter, I would say that we have to, really unite ourselves and see how we can do, and we can create a better tomorrow for all the people around, and create them to such an extent that they are also happy with what they're doing, and also creating a convivial atmosphere, and which is very conducive for the people who really want to really make it big, and also sustain themselves in the long run. So here we have to put our heads together and see how we can make things happen in the coming days, and see to that is sustained to a very great extent, to see people in a much better shape than in all ways, financially, constructively, mindfully, even in their overall makeup of things. That is, I see a lot of people around in a very low ebb, and that is quite saddening at times. But I'm trying my best to lend a helping hand to see to it that these people also come to a level of what they are expecting, and make it a much more fruitful thing to think of. And so yeah, that's it from my end. It's I think it's over.
I know it's a very large topic, and we cannot speak everything that we want to say in just less than 45 minutes or so.
That is true.
I'm sure, sir, you have done. I'm sure that everyone would second me if I say that this was a very the best talk that I have heard on thing, especially the case studies thing. So before Ms. Uma takes it over, I just wanted to ask you one question. This is, they say, I always say people that if you're not updated, you will be isolated. So what are just two things that you would point out that if we need to be in the market tomorrow, okay, what are the two things that we need to do from the traditional methods that we used in the past?
Oh, that's what. A very good question you have asked, and I have a very traditional answer for that. Your eyes and ears have to be always open. First point. Eyes and ears have to be always open. We have to have a second line of defense always. Suppose you are adept at one particular thing. Many people have perished because of that. You won't believe, for me, this pandemic situation has become more glorious, honestly speaking, because everything has come to, my travel has diminished. Nothing is happening. I'm in the four walls, like a lion in the cage. I'm confined to the four walls. Not much of movement. The expenditures have come down. Lot of factors are there. One by one, it comes out. So here, if you see, the main thing is eyes and ears open, one. And second point is, whatever is there in you, there will be a second thing in you always. That has to come out. That you have to, that you'll have to get yourself grounded somewhere and see how things can be, you can think out something, which that is the thing what has to be done with the employees now in various companies. They have been doing one particular thing for years together, and they are so saddled in it that they are not thinking, or they are never thought about a thing which is beyond that. And that is where they are feeling.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Uma?
I hope you got my point.
Yes, yeah, sure, yeah. In case if I have doubts, I'll just personally message.
150% you can call me.
Yeah, over to Ms. Uma. Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Right now, I would request Cherian Kuruvilla to summarize for us. And Mr. Madhu, you can also take the opportunity. In 2 minutes, if both of you all can summarize whatever Abraham sir has brought forth for us so far.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try to summarize all that Mr. Abraham said in 1 minute. That's very difficult, actually. So much that he shared. But I think, to me, there were a couple of clear messages that came through. One was that both the case studies, both Amol as well as Lijjat Papad, right? I don't think they started off as a business. I don't think they started off with the objective of making profit.
Exactly.
Right? It started off as a cooperative movement. It started off with what he mentioned about empathy. It's about looking at the bottom of the pyramid. How can I ensure that the end person who's supplying the item to me is going to benefit? I think, to me, that's a very different approach, and I think that is why it has succeeded.
It has,
because it has sustained for so many years beyond Mr. Varghese' time, because he's left behind a legacy, and it was his vision that actually drove it. Right?
No,
so
he is a phenomenal. There's no doubt about it.
But I'm saying that, sometimes what happens when a leader passes away, the next generation and the next generation, it gets diluted. Exactly. But the very fact that Amul has been able to survive, and not just survive, but actually do so well, that 698 crores that you mentioned is a profit. That's an end result.
Correct.
Right. That's an end result of doing everything right, right, and doing it consistently. Right. So I think the supply chain being the strength is very important. Right.
Yes.
You get the example of the auto industry and electrical vehicles, where supply chain is now becoming a constraint because of global issues.
Yes.
Whereas in the domestic Indian market, because of the farmers being the biggest strength, supply chain was never the issue.
Very true.
Right? Similarly, with Lijjat Papad, I think the example you gave was that it started off as a cooperative among 7 women. Right. Again, I don't think they were looking at it as a business to start.
No, my main thing was that they went into the base. Very few have done that. And they evolved from there upward. And that is a very rare thing. You have to be more of a giver than a taker. And he was that.
So I think that in both the cases, the vision was driven by a social objective more than a business objective.
Correct. And in Indian context, that makes big sense.
And a lot of focus on empathy. I think about empathy, he kept repeating a number of times.
And you won't believe, at one point I missed out. Mr. Varghese Kurian was an atheist.
Yeah.
But the fellow feeling aspect was always there. He always felt for that is very important. Even when I was at the helm, if you don't have that empathy element, that vein in you, you're out. Some point of time, that is why Tatas are sustaining because of that. That element, the main reason for the rift also is that between the chairman, because the new school of thought, old school of thought. And when you rub against each other, that goes. That's the end.
And the last part you obviously mentioned was about the disruption that's happening in the marketplace, in the global market, and how our state of mind, our mental state is what is going to drive whether we survive or whether we die or whether we thrive.
Exactly.
To a large extent, how adaptable are you? To me, these were the main takeaways that I could summarize in 1 minute that Mr. William gave me, or Mr. Kumar gave me, sorry.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Madhu, would you like to add your thoughts, please?
What I understood from sir's discussion is that if we are able to focus on the bottom line of the pyramid, then and you start building the value from a bottom perspective to the top, where the top line is not of big importance to the management, then you hit a milestone and you build a legacy which will go for 100 years and 200 years is one takeaway. Exactly. So the focus should be on the bottom line. That is one thing. Second one is that rather than working in individual silos, if you are able to work with a collaborative mindset where everybody takes a small pie in the circular economy, we are able to make, bring an identity for ourselves in that.
I'd like to correct you here. There is one more thing. I would always tell companies to coexist and run. Even if I have to sustain myself, I have to coexist. The day I think that I can do everything alone, where I don't have the expertise of all, because within a project, there are 100 things. Nowadays, with a flick of a button, they can find out anything. Earlier, it was not like that. It was totally confined to certain pockets. And one expert was given and that was the end. But today, they look at expertise in everything within a project, and they try to question us on that. But if we are able to connect the dots or do a plug and play where one person has got one particular expertise, another person has got a particular expertise, combine that, we become a force to be reckoned with. This is my way of working.
And also something which I read in between the lines in your conversation is that I think if we focus on an unstructured and unorganized sector to all, if imagine all this, all the 36 members today who are present in ICBN collectively form as one team, focus on an unstructured area and an unorganized area, put our brains into it and the money and the time, definitely we'll be able to come out with an interesting company or a startup or whatever. So that unorganized sector is the area to look. This is what I could see from the optics.
No, that we have to. The point what you added is a very valid point, but that all depends on the mindset of the person. That mindset is not, very, welcoming mindset. I am very flexible on that, which you know very well. If I'm not flexible, if I'm adamant and become like a hard-boiled thing, it doesn't work for me. I might get certain things. I might learn from the weakest of people. That learning, that habit to learn and unlearn also. Certain things, if you learn it, if it stays in you, that is dangerous. You will get relegated to the background. But if that unlearn aspect is there, your way to progress is, it is, you go miles. And that is correct. What you're saying is right.
So these are my takeaways from your talk, sir. That's it.
I hope it was okay with you. I was just giving certain frivolous things, but
Sir, clarity is more important than knowledge.
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of ICBN to thank Mr. Abraham Paul. Thank you, sir, for the time you've taken and spent with us and enriched our knowledge. I want to thank the ICBN team who's been at the background organizing this whole thing. Thank you, each one of you participants, for being here, taking the time to be here to learn and enhance. We're grateful. Thank you, Cherian sir, and thank you, Mr. Madhu. William sir, you want to take over?
Yeah. So as we come to an end, I would request Mr. John Cherian to please close us in prayer.
Yeah, thank you, ICBN team, for just organizing everything. So let's just pray and thank God for, a lot of amazing miracles actually in these 2 case studies. Thank you, Paul sir, for sharing that. So I'll just pray about that, and we can witness also the amazing thing that God has done, I believe. So let's pray. Father, we just praise you and thank you for the amazing miracle that you have done of using an atheist to transform the rural community in India, Father, for just being able to take Mr. Varghese Kurian and giving him the character, giving him the strength to handle the challenges that he faced, and to develop an amazing organization like Amul, where it could bring about so much of benefit for the poorest of poor, Father. We also just thank you for just not only giving us bread, but providing us the butter and cheese and ice cream as well, Father. Thank you for all the ways in which you have taken even those 7 Gujarati women who could start the Lijjat Papad company, Father, and the way in which they could transform the housewives, the poorest of women around the country, Father. And thank you for helping us to have this opportunity to meditate on what can happen when we have the right mindset and in being able to being entrepreneurs. And we pray that even the Christian community can see a great number of such entrepreneurs rising up who can transform the entire nation, Father. It's so amazing even just to see that the work that was done through Amul, and so many times it's possibly we have not maybe paid attention to the amazing work that has been done, Father. And sometimes perhaps we look at maybe Mother Teresa, but just to see the incredible work of an entrepreneur like Varghese Kurian, who could bring about so much of social change, Father. We pray that many such social entrepreneurs can rise up. We pray that you give us the courage, the wisdom, the understanding to take this forward. We thank you for once again for bringing us all together. Thank you for this technology of Zoom that we could just at the convenience of our homes be able to listen to a wonderful talk, Father. Thank you so much for this time. Lead us ahead to your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.